Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this session by Real Treasury, From Pract to Product, the build versus buy conversation. And I am so glad to have you join us today. This session has been a long time in the making. I remember having a conversation with someone about it 2 years ago. And what really started me thinking about it was something I actually saw from James Kelly. So in just a moment, we're going to get started with the discussion. But before I do, I want to mention kind of the history, I guess you could say, of how some of these things come around. I started off myself in finance, and I almost hate to put a year to it, but I will, back in 1989. And I found and stumbled my way into Treasury by 1995. And I absolutely loved it. Not only Treasury and everything we were doing in Treasury, but also we had a Treasury management system. At that time, it was ICMS. Now, I hope that there are a few other people on the line today who remember ICMS. You have to be old enough to have worked in Treasury back in that time. But it was an old SunGuard product that eventually became part of, I guess, FIS. So over the years, I utilized the system, loved it, and knew that when I left that job, I wanted to go work for a treasury management system vendor. And that's exactly what I did. And over the years, I've done numerous different roles, but there are a couple of things that never changed. Over and over again, I would hear that reporting is a big problem. And in fact, I found a couple of presentations I did from the early 2000s where we were talking about best practices in forecasting and how difficult that was. And here we are, more than 20 years later, often still talking about reporting and forecasting. Brings us to this topic today, this build versus buy, that there have been gaps in technology that existed 30 years ago, that existed 20 years ago, and that still exists today. The change is that there are more tools than ever before to try and fill gaps. So the question ends up being, where do we expect that fill to come from? Do we expect it to come from vendors? Is it something we do ourselves? Is it something we do with third parties? What do we do now? So this build versus buy was a question before, but I think the question has changed with the ease of various tools available. So first, I want to welcome our panelists to today's discussion. And I'll ask each of you to introduce yourself with pretty much, let's call it a quick introduction. And then we'll jump in and I'll give you a chance to explain more because I think more of your history will come in with some of your answers. If we could start with James Kelly first, then Tanya, then Daniel, and then we'll jump in from there.
Super. So I'm James Kelly. I'm a former group treasurer. I was group treasurer for about 15 years, working in a variety of listed UK companies, and effectively started working with data science about 5 years ago, did a qualification, and that unlocked a lot of capability. And so with the kind of advent of generative AI, that then became an easier way of talking about data science and how that applies in Treasury with people. And so in the last couple of years, I've been working my own practice with a guy called Dominic Lynch, who's based in Sweden, where we've effectively been sharing these ideas around how to improve data and how to use technology to address hard to reach Treasury problems.
Thank you, James.
All right. I'm Tanya Kohen. I am Global Head of Finance Practice at Wave Access currently. And my background is also corporate treasury. I've been a corporate treasurer for over 20 years in different industries, transportation, retail and wholesale, and most recently healthcare. I left my corporate treasury position last year to work in IT. So Wave Access is an IT development and IT consulting firm, bespoke software development, so services, building things. So that's the main focus of the organization. And I'm in my role as finance practice leader. I work with companies with CFOs and treasurers and finance departments that are trying to figure out what is it that they need to build to help the process automation and to improve the way that they work. So I sit in the intersection between business goals and technology implementation right now. So very excited for today's conversation.
Thank you, Tanya. Daniel, you're muted.
Here I am. Hi guys, good to see everyone and be in this panel with such a great group of people. I'm Daniel, CEO and co-founder of Nilus. Nilus is the leading AI native TMS provider. We're working with practitioners, with treasury teams, usually in large, complex businesses, and helping automating, remove risk, and being a business partner for other organizations within the CFO office. I think, we've been in the market for the past 4 years, working with great brand names. And the past, I would say 6 months to 12 months has been like just amazing. The pace of move, the things that we can do together with clients today with our AI native kind of system is just pretty amazing to see, and also the attention and kind of excitement that the market has today. So I'm happy to be here and talk about kind of different angles of treasury problems. My background also coming from finance, but spent the last decade with PayPal. So coming from the payment side, based out of New York, and pleasure to be here and get going.
All right. Thank you, Daniel. To the audience, I invite you to type in chat your questions. There's a Q&A box too. If you prefer that one, we'll check them both as we go along. And so as we have this conversation, you don't have to hold on to your thoughts. You can put them in there and we'll be sure to get to them after we get started a little bit. So with that in mind, James, I want to start with you because you really are the catalyst to me thinking about this more. I first saw a post that came through my feed on LinkedIn where, and I don't remember exactly what you were writing about, but you were basically telling treasury practitioners that they could do so much more, writing a little bit in Python, and you were demonstrating how you can take some data, probably from, I don't know, Excel or something, and do some pretty cool things with it. And I remember being pretty skeptical when I first saw it, because I know that I think of myself as being a little more technologically advanced than maybe the average practitioner, but I certainly wasn't planning to ever do any writing of anything in Python. And, and so when I first saw it, I was skeptical, but I was also intrigued. And I think I connected with you at that time and made sure that I continued to read your post. What made you go down that path of believing that this was something that treasury practitioners wanted and needed, and how did that come about?
So I think it started with the problems that I couldn't solve. So broadly speaking, up until 4 or 5 years ago, broadly speaking, that the range was ERP, TMS, Excel, and Outlook. That's your kind of available tool set. And obviously you can do some things in Excel, but there's quite a lot that you can't do. And your TMS setup was typically a set of workflows that were predefined. And so if you were looking to do something that fell outside those workflows, it's much more challenging. So some of the tasks I was given, for example, was to create a divisional cash flow for Pearson when I was there. but the balance sheet wasn't divisionalized. So effectively, the raw data wasn't ready for that. Now, the data was too big for Excel. You were looking at multiple millions of rows. And it was too heavy duty to be able to do kind of manually and independently. We did effectively the finance transformation, pulled together a group. They worked out it would take about 6 months and they'd need about 10 people working on the project. And what I found was that by effectively inheriting the P&L or the business unit characteristic from the P&L into the balance sheet, I was able to do most of the heavy lifting. Then we were left with a few tens of thousands of transactions that needed allocating to division. Quite quickly, we were able to build rules around that. And so a project that was, 10 people for 6 months or something, actually in practice was 4 days for me and an analyst in Python. Roll that forward, and one of the things that I always found quite fiddly was things like going concern modeling, sensitivity analysis around what if we do an acquisition, or what would this transaction do for covenants and things like that. And I moved from a fairly clunky Excel model that kept crashing into Python. Again, quite a lot of skepticism about why are we bothered with this? Why are you doing it? Everyone understands Excel. And then even the auditors who were a bit concerned about, new language, etc., when people saw that it would run instantly and all of the calculations were clear, and so that skepticism was converted. So roll that forward, and advent of generative AI, and suddenly all you really need is the core concepts around what is it you're trying to do, and the tools can help write Python for you. And so around this time that I really started posting on LinkedIn, I was seeing that this was something that, because I was doing it with my team, I was teaching them how they could write Python and create scripts, that effectively a lot of the tasks like, KYC automation and bank account opening forms and all of those kinds of things, we could actually solve those ourselves rather than having to wait for a vendor to provide that functionality or try and do it in Outlook or Excel.
And you had a treasury management system, correct?
Yes. Yeah. So we had an Ion treasury management system, but our experience was that, that was great for the kind of core regular tasks, liquidity management, FX management, etc. But that actually there were a lot of areas that fell outside that. And while in some cases there might have been modules available, that was still another, couple of months to get a module up and running. And really for tasks that were done, once a week for 3 hours or something. So doing a 2-month project to kind of, that's a big sledgehammer to crack a nut. And so, being able to create very quickly on the fly tools that helped with that kind of thing really made a big difference.
And of course, that's what led to your business. Now, Daniel, you kind of came at it from a totally different angle. What made you found Nilus? What need did you see that wasn't being met with all the many other treasury management products that already exist in the marketplace?
Yeah, so that's it's interesting that we're starting from that point, because I think it feels to me so long ago, and we're now in this AI evolution. But I worked for 6 years with PayPal. I led the markets for most of the European markets, EMEA markets, and during my time at PayPal, I did a lot of different things. My background is also finance earlier, but during my time at PayPal, I worked with a lot of companies and with their CFO teams. And consistently, the problem was, how do we get clarity? How do we get connected? How do we reconcile? We just saw that in masses, right? Every single large company that we interacted with had a similar problem. Danny, my co-founder and CTO, was actually building a TMS internally with one of the largest lenders in the market. And so we had the technology. She was building an AI TMS back then for Fundbox. That was the name of the company. And we decided to go after the market with an innovative solution. We didn't have the weight on our shoulders and on how a legacy TMS should work. So we were able to innovate into this market, and thankfully we did that, and we support right now some of the greatest brands. So that was my story on how I got into Treasury. Yeah.
Okay. So you decided just to build and start with the kind of the whole TMS, while James was really thinking about plugging gaps as opposed to kind of replacing the existing infrastructure. And Tanya, you also came from a treasury background, now working at Wave Access, as you described it, kind of an IT development shop. What kinds of things are you seeing? What are you being asked to build? Are you filling holes or building new solutions? What are you doing?
Yeah, all of the above. So for today, and I mean literally, for starting from product design for startup companies, and ending with actually filling like certain gaps as narrow as, I don't know, Power BI dashboard that needs to be enhanced or built from scratch. So, but what matters for this conversation today, I think, is that if we're talking about treasury, org structure and treasury processes, I think that's the starting point for whatever we do. And I think this is a starting point for all teams, strategically, like start thinking strategically about what the team is doing. So if we were to, and I'm sure we will shift a little more into AI with this conversation today, but even, broader kind of in broader sense, technology wise, it is for me having worked in very large organizations. We always just in Treasury, we tried to keep up. It was, especially in a, quick, and fast growing organization, it's always a challenge for Treasury to make sure, yes, I have, for example, I have a TMS system, or I don't have a TMS system, but if there are new channels of receiving cash, is this automated? Do I have enough, process kind of automation for this to even be able to timely make decisions on cash management, on investment? So to me, I first started being really proactive with technology, starting from that place. Like, can we keep up with the business? Are we doing enough, or do we need to hire more people? God forbid, in Treasury, to be able to carry out our tasks efficiently. So to avoid all these roadblocks as the company is growing, you need to be very careful of what technology you're using, what processes you're using. But that even in mature organizations, even more so, there's so much legacy infrastructure and systems and just fragmentation very often in the IT system. So all these are very different challenges, but they boil down to, for Treasury professionals, all this boils down to, do I understand my processes well? Am I able to map each part of the process to a system or a data set? And the answer should be yes. And we've done this exercise. And if not, it's very worthwhile taking time to do that. And then the next question are there still gaps that are not covered by great products or, some other automated processes? And if there are, it's worth revisiting and thinking, okay, how can I bridge those gaps? How can I automate those flows? And so for me, it was AI, again, just little spoiler alert. We're all talking about how AI will make us work differently. So I think that's how. So it can really truly enhance this whole, kind of flow of the way we work, and so that we won't hopefully have any of those broken processes in the future. So that's kind of the approach that makes sense. That's the approach that we like to take.
Well, you're right that AI certainly is changing the whole context of the discussion. You know, where James started off talking about Python, I don't think anybody is even remotely trying to learn how to code anything anymore, not with necessarily the native language when it comes to regular practitioners. People are feeling like they can do so much more with AI tools that are available to all. The question is not can they, but should they, and kind of when should they? So let's talk about that a little bit. Um, to the audience, I would love it if you would put in the chat what you see as opportunities, where you feel like there are unsolved problems in your treasury. As you write that or type that in about what you see as a potential area of that kind of needs a solution or needs to be solved, it would be great if you also added to that, do you have anything right now? I'm always curious about, we have a tool and this is still a problem, or you're literally starting with no tool at all and you have a problem. So
Can
I'd love
I
to see kind of what the
can I be
range of
controversial for a
answers there
moment,
might be.
Tracy? So your question about can they or should they? One of the things that's interesting at the moment is that as AI tools become more agentic in nature, it looks like it's possible to do more purely with the AI tool without having any kind of deterministic background behind it. But underlying, large language models aren't great at doing maths, and they're also not actually very good at iterating around things, which is actually sometimes what you need to do in Treasury, if that makes sense. They're designed to give you an answer. So it's one of those things that there are certain times where it looks like you can do something, but you actually can't in the way that the tool wants to try and guide you, if that makes sense. And so it is useful and kind of important to understand some of the principles. And I think, I mean, Daniel can speak for Nilus, but I think for a lot of the TMS providers and kind of people in finance more generally, often what you're doing is you're using a mix of Python and agentic, with the agents interacting with the Python scripts. And that's one of the areas where like that expertise is really important, because if you pick the right method, then you get the right answer every time. If you pick the wrong method, you get something that is confident that it gives you the right answer every time, but it doesn't actually.
So, James, do you bring that up because regular, everyday people are feeling like they can build these solutions, but without a deeper understanding of the tools they're using? You're saying
Yeah.
they can't necessarily trust what
So
they're
so
doing.
I had a conversation with someone at the UK Treasurers Association conference a couple of days ago, who's got really into Claude, which is super. And as you know, I'm a big fan of people trying it themselves. And he said, well, we've got spreadsheets at the moment. It's a big business though, like 1.5 billion, something like that. But I reckon, do we need a TMS now? We could pretty much build it in Claude, can't we? And it's one of those things that I joke that a lot of these tools that they're like your local neighborhood drug dealer. That the first one is free. You can build one app. It sits on its own. It works quite nicely. You're okay. It's when you start getting into trying to do multiple things, particularly where it's really important that there's zero failures. So I'm not sure I would want to build a payments engine, for example, in Claude.
So you think there's limitations there. So is that where maybe vendors come in? Is that the advantage of maybe considering buying versus building? What do you
Yeah.
think, Daniel, especially since you're offering something?
Yeah, I think that when we think of our unique business value, we bring the good of both worlds. It's a SaaS solution. It is always there with high performance, versions, and really can give you this infrastructure to support connectivity, payments, forecast, that all the different items that are, when you're working with an enterprise, with a large mid-market company, you need a system that is reliable, every day, real time, doesn't break. So you get this, but AI allows us to provide a very customized solution. So if you have a new covenant, you can actually add it to the system. You don't need to wait till the next roadmap item that Kariba would launch in a year and a half from now. I think that people are underestimating right now the risk that there is with building and maintaining something with Claude. It's great for maybe reporting or presentation, but can it provide a full end-to-end workflow? And those workflows are not just for forecasting, but also for anything, right? So debt and FX and bank account management, that's where usually things tend to break. And even if it doesn't break in the first time, you get a change, something changes, and you end up with, oh, I need to maintain this thing all the time myself, and instead of running my day job and running the treasury team, I'm becoming an engineer and working with Claude. So that's kind of our 2 cents. And we as a vendor, we bridge this gap with both high reliability, but also support for all this agentic infrastructure. So our workflows, our agents are supported, are vetted. They are working at scale with a lot of different customers. And I think you can achieve greatness with Claude, but for specific things. If you're a smaller company, maybe Claude is good if you just need something, once a month or once a week. But yeah, these are my 2 cents.
An interesting perspective because, of course, now I'm expecting there to be, certain, I'll call them biases just because of the position that you come from. But I think what we're seeing as I look at some of the items in chat is that some of the problems people are having appear to be regardless of whether or not they have a tool. It maybe is a newer tool or maybe older tools, but people are still saying the same things that I heard in 1995, which is that reporting, and in this case, I see it says like dashboards instead, but I think of dashboards in some ways as being similar to reporting. And of course, cash forecasting seems to be as still an unsolved, getting better, but an unsolved problem. So hold on 1 second. Hold on. And so I want to ask Tanya, who's kind of been sitting in kind of the middle of where companies are often coming to her at companies like her saying, we've got these tools, but we still have problems. How are you approaching that, especially in a time where executives are often coming at it with a very open-ended question saying, we need to do something with AI? How are you looking to solve real problems and maybe even meet the AI mandate?
Yeah. I think that's the right question to ask. And I don't think it's buy versus build, but I'm biased, of course, but to me it's buy and build. And so I think there are 2 levels of processes, so to speak. So what Daniel was making great points about, if there is a set workflow and if it's carried out within a system and a system perimeter efficiently, that's a good thing. And 100%, don't spend on your daily work, don't spend more than you have to. Rely on the system. Make sure you have good system in place. Make sure that your daily tasks are carried out efficiently and are all properly logged and all the compliance is met. So that's a great thing. And I really, although it's it's tricky to generalize for everyone, so it's not the same for everyone. But to me, certain parts of the task should be carried out in the system. But then what James was earlier saying, like more decision making and decision support situation and like scenario analysis, that's the part where you, so we can even split it between like, I don't know, even work structure wise, there are, more, there are people that would carry out daily and people that would analyze and people that would make decisions, right? So, right, like normally these are all different people within one team. And so, first of all, I think we can all be elevated. All team members can be elevated to do more strategic analytical work. That'll be more interesting for people. They would not burn out this way. So again, good supporting argument for having good systems in place and good products in place. But then still, what are we doing in Treasury? We are actually supposed to analyze and make decisions that work for the company because each company is different. If all companies were the same, what is the competitive advantage in the market? Like we wouldn't be in the business. So all companies are supposed to act somewhat differently from others. And therefore the processes are supposed to be somewhat unique. And the way we even operate in Treasury, the way we use our cash, the way our investments, strategies are structured, the way our capital investment allocation is structured. So these are all different things. So to me, when you get to this level of how do we make decisions? Okay, we retrieved information, we did our daily stuff, it's all working great, but then now what? What do we do with this insight and how do we translate it into the business decision? So this is the portion where we can use even more help from AI these days, because that would be, instead of delegating certain things to an analyst, for a treasurer, for example, and asking them, oh, can you please go to system A, B, and C, retrieve these reports, and then provide me some of your recommendations of what you think, we should be doing, or like, we're going to do this M&A. Can you do a few scenarios for our cash forecast if the first thing or second thing or third thing comes to play, So there's always this component of work that requires decision making, requires, analyzing even more than on a daily basis. So for this, 100%, we're being asked a lot, like, how do I dig really deep into my database? Or like, oh, I know that this information is somewhere in my system. I'm just not sure which report. These questions suck out time out of senior leadership and their analysts, because they have to spend time figuring things out and answering the question, what do we do with what we have? So that's a good usage of AI capabilities, but also execution as well. It's just a question of which, payments maybe not the number one task to automate with agentic AI, but certain other things are, and there is also room for that. Did I answer the question, Tracy, in your opinion, or did I make
a few different things? Yeah. So it sounded like you're saying that that you're asked to help automate some of the basics, or that you're thinking that people can get those basics from existing tools, but sometimes that they don't help with that next question, which is then what? I think that's what I heard you say.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So Daniel or James, do you have thoughts about that? Should they be looking for some kind of existing tool that maybe companies can buy to handle the primary automation, but then looking to some AI solutions to kind of go to that next level of saying, what do we do with this data?
So I think it depends where people are in the journey. So a lot of companies have other priorities, whether they're doing M&A or whatever it happens to be. So it really depends, like, how big a project can they take on? I think what we will see in the next kind of 2 to 3 years is there will be a wave of people either moving to agentic solutions, or the existing solutions deploying a wider variety of agentic technology in there. So I'd be interested in hearing what you're seeing, but certainly we've got a few examples where people are selecting agentic solutions over bigger, more established players, which is quite interesting. So I think go for it.
Just to add on that, and that goes back to the previous point on kind of what we're seeing in the market. I think that the legacy providers, they're just not built with AI. And for that reason, it's very hard for them to change the existing database infrastructure that they use. It's hard for them to change the workflow so it supports an agentic workflow. It's impossible at this point unless they change their entire infrastructure. So that's the reason why for anyone, using the legacy players, you still, people don't see that improvement in the market. But when you work with new players like us, or when you work with Claude, for example, you can definitely see these improvements. I think it's a question on there's specific different workflows that are right for self-build and for a system. And I think it just depends on kind of where you are in the journey and what are your priorities. If you want to get a specific kind of dashboard report, maybe you can achieve that with Claude on top of your existing infra. But again, if you need something that is more complex, that involves more people, that has like the best uptime, and you need to take like big decisions every day, I think you probably need an agentic mentor for that.
So I hear you, but I can't help but go back and think we've always done some pretty great things with automation. I don't know if AI is required for everything. And it comes up certainly in every discussion. I was recently at a conference and it was on almost every booth. However, I recall, even back in the 90s and certainly throughout the 2000s and even to this current day, companies making major leaps forward in automation, in time savings, and understanding of their data and cash visibility and all the core parts of Treasury, being able to make their daily decisions, all those things with legacy tools, with new tools, with all of them. So I don't think we can necessarily throw legacy tools away. They're continuing to make progress too.
So I would, I'm not sure that there is legacy versus new, if that makes sense. Because I think the reality is that underlying, let's say, cash pooling, it is the same process. You might have slightly different tactics to get to the same answer, but broadly speaking, it's the same process. Where AI can benefit is that it makes it quicker and easier to do certain things. But a lot of the time, there are areas where it's harder to use AI, and areas where actually it's AI plus automation. Like the reality is that the AI players are generally it's not pure AI. It's a mix of AI and automation. And that distinction and knowing when to use each is a huge part of the skill. Because if you use the wrong tool in the wrong place, then life gets very difficult.
Yep.
You can't do KYC deterministically. You can't do maths purely using AI. So it's kind of like find the right tool for the right thing and then use the right mix. And the best vendors are kind of combining the two.
Yeah. And I think that the one thing that I think that people don't really understand about AI yet is that it's, AI can write Python script that can be deterministic and can do the same thing every single time. And that's one way of using AI, which is widely used. That's actually the best common use of AI today. It's coding with scripts. And the other way is just using the statistical kind of AI kind of modeling and using the right path for the specific task is the key here. Again, whether you're using a vendor that provides these options or you're using a homegrown build, that's the key. And that's where a lot of stuff are actually scripts that are running, but they're very specific to your business. And that's the beauty of what AI provides today.
I'm so supportive of this comment. Yes, please make sure that it's relevant for the infrastructure that the organization is using and that guardrails are in place. But may I also comment about the AI writing code? At being IT development shop, we spend so much time validating the code that AI written, and you still need set of eyes, human eyes on that. Just I wanted to mention that it requires double checking of its work, a lot of it. So as far as finance and treasury, because we're so sensitive to, there's no room for error when you're talking cash, especially if there is execution happening, that cash is getting moved or something like that. But there are certain practices that are already pretty much developed in the market to either human in the loop, which I just mentioned, like have human set of eyes validating and approving something before something happens. That's one practice that's been working great. Or another thing is making sure that the guardrails are in place. And by that, I mean, you can tell a language model, for example, to look for answers in specific data set. But this is something that needs to be configured. This is not something that comes out of the box with a subscription-based solution. So that's why, working very closely. If there is something to be built, IT should be involved, and in-house IT department should be also understanding of where the data comes from and what happens to it. But in general, there is much more that we can do now with AI that we used to do manually, or like switching between systems, working with different data sets. Now we can have this this help from AI, and we should use it.
What do you think regular people? Oh, sorry, James, did you have a comment?
I was just going to say that I think one of the exciting things that happened with AI is how it's made connecting systems and data much easier. It's made it much more accessible for people. And like the thing I always felt most uncomfortable with was I never knew where all my cash was. Like, broadly speaking, it wasn't economically viable, either from a cost or a time perspective, to connect to every single one of Pearson's banks centrally. So I had to rely on, someone in one of the regions would have visibility of that bank account. But broadly speaking, if something happened there, I would hear about it third hand and, over a period of time. So the fact that it's now so much easier both to connect to banks and to ERP systems and other things, it really makes the treasurer's job a lot easier, and you've got a lot more insight to be able to do that role.
I definitely agree with that, because I see global cash visibility as a solved problem now. Not necessarily that every company has solved, but there are a variety of different solutions that can get you there now. And that used to be one of the top, on surveys back in the early 2000s. That was the number one problem in Treasury, was global cash visibility. That's no longer the answer. The number one answer now is usually forecasting, still with some version of reporting being in the top 5.
But again, the interesting thing is that on the forecasting piece, we're plugging away at that piece as well. So visibility solved, reconciliation and tagging is solved really with AI as well. So we are moving up the value chain. Makes sense.
That's right. Some of these problems are slowly going away. It's just taking, longer than people thought, but change is happening really fast now. So what should the average person, and when I say average person, I mean like average person in finance or treasury, what should they be doing themselves right now to at least better understand the possibilities of what can be done? How should they be playing, I'll call it playing, if you will, with not necessarily their company's data, but even if they did it with their own personal data or dummy data or whatever, what can they be doing in AI right now to better understand what AI is capable of, so that they'll understand where maybe they can apply solutions within the work environment?
So one of the exercises that we do in our workshops that works quite well is effectively get people to interview AI tools. So, ask questions and get them to respond in a star way or whatever, for a role. So you kind of go, I am an expert on FX dealing. That's my job. This is what I know all about. And basically, try and trip it up. Ask about, how do I get money out of Mozambique, or, what are the currency regulations in Zimbabwe, and that kind of thing. And actually what you find is that people are almost always pleasantly surprised by how much is there. And taking that idea and kind of going, okay, well, actually, I've got this difficult thing. I've got these 3 spreadsheets that come into me. And one of the things I have to do is I have to collate all the data and then I write a report. Well, why not test it out? Go, okay, right, here are the 3 spreadsheets. See if you can collate this into this format. Here's a screenshot of what the final things looks like. Have a go. And I think that's kind of the best way of doing it now, to kind of really test it out in a real environment where you know what good looks like.
Mhm. So you're saying kind of test it out. Are you seeing clients, Daniel or Tanya, kind of taking that same approach with a variety of different types of AI solutions, where they're maybe doing things in parallel? They're seeing what the system can do and then still doing it in a very manual way themselves, to kind of compare and understand what maybe the boundaries are. How much can they trust what AI responses are giving them?
There's definitely a time where you want to make sure that you get a consistent good result. It's like any new system, right? Whether it's AI or not AI, and you're switching from something, you want to make sure that you're seeing apples to apples, and you get a consistent kind of answer that applies to you and works for you. So we definitely have, I'm not sure if that was the question, but we definitely have that in our process with clients. And if I could just go back to the previous question as well, I think that the best thing is to, for practitioners, is to try to think about your daily workflow and where are those things that you still do manually on Excel, and just go to either your provider, if it has AI in the system, or one of the AI solutions, and see yourself if you can solve it. Having friction is the best thing that you can do right now, and learn, right? It's the beautiful thing here is that we are all becoming builders. That's how you should think about yourself. Whether you're using, we have our own workflow creation, our own agent builder. Our clients can build the agents for themselves. So that's the world we live in. We're becoming builders. And in order to become builders, we need to try until you're getting to this amazing builder level.
Well, it's interesting to hear you say we can all be kind of builders and using these various tools to become that. But putting on a treasurer hat now, or the CFO hat, or the internal auditor hat, how do we, or what should we be saying to individuals, to treasury teams, about how to ensure that everything we're doing now, that we've really got a truly good handle on it, that we have confidence in the data that we're putting in our ERPs, or the journal entries we're creating, the reports and the numbers that we're providing to accounting, that's going out as we do our 10Qs and 10Ks. How do we have confidence that we're doing things correctly, particularly when people are just that, being builders themselves now, building all kinds of internal tools for use, whether, kind of purchased or literally just totally built internally? How do executives have confidence in what's happening in their finance and treasury teams?
I'll just give my 2 cents. I'm really keen on hearing the rest of the team here, but I think you need to maintain the existing principles of work that you have today. So it needs to be auditable. It needs to be reliable, uptime. If you can maintain those with the AI service that you use, that's part of our system, for example, and why we can sell to enterprises, that's great. If you can't do that, then you need to keep maintaining your Excel. But Excel is also error prone. Excel is also manual. That technology will always bring you a new thing that comes up. So, and again, when you want to keep a deterministic flow, AI can build a deterministic flow, right? It doesn't need to be statistics. So that's my 2 cents, but I'd love to hear the rest of the folks here.
James, Tanya, how do people
Sure.
trust the results?
So I think ISO 42001 is probably the answer to this. So effectively, the principles are transparency, everything has to go through a review process, etc. All of the ideas that are included within the ISO 42001 framework align with things like the SOX framework. So when we work with large corporates and we're deploying AI tools, anything that's going into production, effectively, that's going to be used for a core process, then it has to align to those principles. And that means that effectively, once you've got a solution that you're happy with, everything gets locked down, version control, access restrictions around who's able to make changes. Any changes have to go through audit logs, etc., pre-approval. So all of the things that you would expect of a kind of full software solution. And ultimately, if I go back to my going concern example, like I joke, it's a little bit like there's a place in Paris called the Pompidou Center where all of the pipes are built on the outside. And it's a little bit like that. You want to make sure that all of the workings and all of the calculations and the thought processes that are used in the decision are exposed so that they can be reviewed, audited, and particularly where it's mission critical, like an FX deal or a payment or something like that, that you've effectively got confirmation that someone has checked all of the key inputs before it goes live.
Yeah, I agree. This is so important. And just a few words about our experience. We've had great success with building something we call AI overlays. Well, it's like an additional layer that resides within company's infrastructure, validated by their IT department as part of their system architecture. So something that the company owns and can visibly see what it's doing. So this layer would host those, AI agents and different bots that would then in turn talk to different systems or retrieve information from data sets, Snowflake, ERP systems, even TMS systems. If the TMS system is already natively AI supported, there is room for agent to agent communication, which would require certain protocols and standards to exist as well. It's just some systems are earlier in the process than others. But it is a very enterprise grade approach to make sure that the company understands exactly what their AI is doing for them and where it's getting information from. And if it's decision sensitive, there should be no room for retrieving information from the internet, from public sources, while it's not expected to be doing so. So and it's all solved. So it's not something that is yet to come. There are certain techniques to deal with all these things. It's just important to know that this is what teams should be paying attention to. And if I may bring up a broader use case scenario, just really quickly, we discussed, well, at least I did, discuss different hierarchies of processes as some of the attendees commented. So thank you for supporting this process approach, because that's what we all discussed today is very important. So I think also thinking about cross-functional processes, this is a great use case. So provided that we would mention global liquidity positioning solved. So there are so many things that already have solutions through traditional automation that are great, and they should, anything that can work algorithmically should stay there. I also don't think we should now, reimagine the whole thing and like say, okay, let's solve everything with AI. No, we should not. But that being said, a lot of cross-functional interactions are just not, they either don't exist at all, or they're very email-based, manual, let's meet by the cooler type of thing and discuss and just see what we should be doing, right? So cross-functional interaction is something that very often Treasury is not very much involved in. So, and I'm very supportive of, the fact that working capital management, cash cycle transformation projects, and like just optimization and performance improvement of the business overall, they always involve cross-functional interaction. So sometimes getting more visibility into AP, AR, inventory, this just as an example of working capital, or even other areas like marketing. What other new geographies we're trying to market to? So very soon for Treasury, there's going to be new country, new geography added to their cash forecasting, right? So Treasury is touching everything because it's cash. And so to me, having AI supporting, like we can delegate this cross-functional collaboration to AI right now. That's a great use case. It can be as simple as let's put an AI agent in place to monitor all the receivables. And like whenever something happens, there's an anomaly detected, then Treasury gets heads up to adjust their cash forecast. And I'm just simplifying right now, but as simple as that, which is not simple to do manually, because then you have to, have a full person monitoring this on a daily basis, right? So that's not doable. But putting machine in place and doing this like constantly, that's no problem at all.
So,
Or more
Tanya,
sophisticated things.
I think I hear you saying, though, that's kind of, it's about the data, and the way that Treasury maybe can help make a difference is by having access to a little more data, sometimes that sits outside of core traditional Treasury, to begin to make a bigger impact on what you're calling kind of these cross-functional workflows. Did I understand
Yes,
that
thank you.
correctly?
Put it beautifully. Yes, exactly.
And Daniel or James, how easy is that for companies to have access to the ERP data, to maybe data further upstream in sales, or downstream further, maybe more balance sheet data? How can they have access to it to use these tools more broadly?
So if I look at a lot of the companies that we work with have either got a data warehouse, or one of the first things that we do is build a Treasury data warehouse. And normally the two groups who additionally get access to that are tax and financial control. So that they've got it for reporting and things like tax reporting and things. Again, APIing into the ERP systems are pretty straightforward now. So it's a fairly simple exercise to do that, and creating the dashboards and reporting and things off that is, it's Tableau or it's Power BI, etc. So really quite simple. So again, this is one of those areas where things have really come on. And then in terms of getting access to upstream, I mean, there are loads of companies who are doing really interesting things, and if you were able to connect into tools like Slack and email, etc., things like sentiment analysis can give you a lot. So if you've got a construction company, for example, and you're looking out for, is there a problem with the next stage payment? Are they going to meet the deadline? Then you can often pick that up through the email chatter, which means that, it's information that might not necessarily be in a financial system yet, but you can pick it up elsewhere.
Time has gone by so fast, I can't believe we're already at an hour. I'd like to have each one of you end by thinking or suggesting or telling the audience what you think is kind of next. What should they be looking for or doing or expecting from Treasury and from Treasury tools, from AI, and let's call it even the next 1 year, which used to be a long period of time and seems it seems very short now that things are changing fast. So what do you think they should be looking for or to expect in the next 1 year from technology changes? Daniel, let's start with you.
So I think that the where this is going is moving away from ad hoc kind of AI questions, dashboards, reports to a full workflow that is governed by agents. And that's where the world is going, whether it's TMS, Treasury, or other finance functions, sales, marketing. We're going to have workflows that are delivered by agents end to end. And you as a treasurer, you're going to overlook the process and kind of make sure that it's being managed well.
Tanya? Well, thank you, each one of you. I think what I take away from this is that, number one, AI is definitely here and it's here to stay, but it still ultimately is about our problems and that we should be looking to solve real problems. And if we stay focused on that, then we'll see that there's a variety of different ways to achieve that. So thank you, each one of you, for joining us. James, Daniel, Tanya, I really appreciate you and your time and your thoughts. And audience, thank you. I see so many questions we were answering real time as we were going along. So I appreciate your time and consideration. And we hope to see you again on another webinar with Real Treasury. Thank you.